Welcome to Feminized. It's time for a show that turns the spotlight on the powerful women shaping cannabis culture. The cannabis industry is on fire and women are sparking it up. If you like the show, please subscribe. You can also subscribe to the Feminized Podcast with Liz Grow on YouTube and Instagram. The future is feminized. Listen up, ladies and gents. Today's guest is Lisa Pittman, a top cannabis attorney from Austin, Texas. Lisa is a thought leader and is working to change stale old minds and stale old men into believers one day at a time. You are going to love this conversation. So without further ado, Lisa Pittman. Hey sis, you're now listening to the Feminized Podcast. Well, good. Well, welcome Lisa Pittman to the Feminized Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I learned something really interesting about you, that in 2017, you gave the very first marijuana CLE to the ABA at their national meeting. I mean, what? Like, to break that down for people who don't understand what that is, the ABA is the American Bar Association. It's the biggest network of attorneys in this country. And Lisa Pittman gave the very first continuing education class to introduce marijuana law. Let's just jump in there.
Yeah. So, I had gotten into it in 2015, really got serious about it in 2016. And I've been participating in the American Bar Association for 20 years. And so as I got into this, I thought, we need to do a continuing legal education on this. At that time, it was 2016. We only had a few legal states, but, it presented really complicated issues of law where we have a state-federal tension. Different states treat the same issues in marijuana differently. But even though I personally was interested in getting into this area of law, the pitch to the American Bar Association, which is, long established, very traditional state organization, the pitch for the CLE, first of all, it had to be a year in advance in 2016, had to get a lot of committee sponsorships behind me. That's where my 20-year history with the ABA came in handy. And the pitch had to be, how is marijuana law or how is marijuana legality going to affect your practice if you're in a state where it's legal? It couldn't be about, hey, do you want to be a marijuana lawyer?
Right.
So it had to be if you're a landlord-tenant lawyer or if you're an IP lawyer or, how are the overlay of the marijuana regulations going to affect your day-to-day practice? And so that was presented in New York City at the 2017 annual meeting, and it was a smash hit. And so they took the attendance list from that and they created a task force. And a task force exists to decide whether or not there should be a standing committee on it. And so we got the fastest task force to committee, ever in 1 year. And then in 2019, the ABA put on its first standalone 2-day CLE in Chicago that was completely devoted to cannabis. And I brought in, all the cannabis executives I knew for an executive roundtable. We covered hemp. We covered everything, social equity, you name it, over those 2 years. So kind of like what I've been doing just all throughout my life with the various causes that might seem out there at first, I wanted to bring a level of credibility to this and a level of normalcy and start, I often work kind of subversively to embed us into more mainstream acceptance. And so that was really my goal with that. And it just really took off.
Oh, that's incredible. So many lawyers now credit you with really being their inspiration to get into cannabis law. I'm sure you know that, but your name comes up so much, Lisa. It's just a testament to the 20 years of, relationship building and great work that you've been doing in the legal field. And to, I think, move your focus to cannabis was really probably eye-opening to your colleagues, that this is something that they need to be looking at too.
Yeah, it was really interesting. So, my previous life of commercial litigation, I had built a big network on LinkedIn in the early days of LinkedIn. So I already had this big network, and I started putting out some articles about cannabis, 2015, 2016. Some of my colleagues would disconnect with me on LinkedIn.
Wow.
Nobody would like the post. I saw the U.S. attorney for Texas looking at my profile. Another issue in marijuana law is often when a state legalizes, the first thing the state bar does is come back and say, attorneys, you cannot advise these cannabis businesses because they're federally illegal. And so then the attorneys have to go up to the Supreme Court and get that rule changed. So anyway, so that's kind of, the situation is very taboo, but, I just kept believing in what I was doing. I kept putting it out there like a musician at open mic night. I just kept believing in myself and believing in the cause. And then over time, now I've got over 7,000 followers, and my posts get thousands of looks and hundreds of likes. And so it just shows, what a long evolution that we've come through. And as you mentioned, I'm happy to hear, other lawyers saying positive things about me, but that's not how it started off.
It's so sad, to just hear that, lawyers, we expect for lawyers to be, on a different level of intellect, right? You guys understand the rules of the game, and you help us understand the rules of the game too. But to hear that lawyers were just so close-minded to, this emerging industry and, this emerging medical treatment emerging, right? That's really sad and disheartening, like, why were they so afraid, do you think?
Well, I have to say that most lawyers, they get out of law school, they go to a law firm, and they start practicing in some niche area of law. And then that's about all they ever know how to do. And they're really risk averse. They like the same. And a lot of law is looking backwards 200 years. Okay, how is this going to play out? How am I going to argue for it to play out? And it's a lot of repetition. I'm just a little bit different, when I take the personality test and the Myers-Briggs, all the lawyers are over in the same quadrant, and I'm over here in left field in the creative box and, in the feeling box and intuition and things like that. So, I've always just had a quest for knowledge, for new challenges. I took a lot of different jobs earlier in my career just because I wanted to litigate a different subject matter area, or, I've always wanted to explore and try out new things. And the more difficult it is, the more excited I am about it. And, a lot of cannabis law, as I mentioned, it has this dire federal state conflict. Right. The laws are constantly changing and evolving. And to me, that's exciting. We get to be part of the formation of new laws. And, in so doing, I'm always thinking, how is this going to be interpreted by a judge in the future? How am I going to represent my client on X? And so we have to divine how that law is going to be interpreted in the future because it hasn't been determined yet. And so that uncertainty, a lot of personalities just maybe aren't comfortable with that.
Right. Oh, God. Thank God you are. Because it really does feel like, just as a Texan and, a cannabis advocate, it's hard work. We're pushing boulders up the hill. But, when I see posts from you, and you break down, really kind of complex legal topics around cannabis, it's like, it gives me hope that we have somebody who's fighting for us, for humans, in the whole, complexity of cannabis, as we're kind of entrenched in the U.S.
That's what it's about. That's why I got into it when I read the Senate bill testimony of the mothers with children with epilepsy in 2015. And I volunteered at Texas Children's as a teenager for terminally ill children. I wanted to be an art therapist for them. So that personally lit the fire under me, as well as my own daughter had epilepsy. And I had to take her to Texas Children's and Memorial Hermann in Houston. And I was given conflicting treatment plans. One said, we're going to medicate her up and she's not going to be the same child anymore. And this is going to ruin the development of her brain and organs. The other one said, before rushing to that conclusion, why don't we just closely monitor this and see if she outgrows it? It might be a juvenile form. That's what I elected to do. And she got cleared last year, thank goodness. But that just showed me that these chiefs of the departments were just guessing as to what her condition was and how to treat it. So I could really empathize with these mothers' painful treatment choices that they were having to make, maybe leaving their families, churches, schools, communities to go seek treatment in another state because you'll do anything for your child, or maybe they don't have the means to. So that just really lit the fire under me. Why can't we have a natural plant that has no really bad side effects as an option? Why can't that be a tool in the toolbox? And why aren't any lawyers standing up to change this? So I just decided I'd do it.
Wow. Oh my God. So you do it. So had you had any experience at all with cannabis litigation, or did you know anybody who was doing it at that point? Who was that person who kind of helped you up into it? Or was there anyone there?
There really wasn't anyone there. So how I got into it was, I started subscribing to all of the places that you can get information. One of them was Cannabis Law blog, the Harris Bricken, and started going to conferences and started meeting and networking with people. But there weren't really any prominent attorneys yet. We only had Colorado and Washington legal at the time for adult use. So I was really just kind of forging my own way here.
Leave it to a Texas woman. Leave it to a Texas woman to just figure it out. Now, was there any added pressure because you were a Texas woman, and Texas is seen as very, very conservative, and we're still very afraid and entrenched in reefer madness in some ways?
Yeah, well, much like, my strategy with the ABA, I go into the legislature in a suit and pearls as a mother and an attorney, and I focus on those who need their hearts and minds changed.
Yeah.
And, but I have to tell you, a lot of the Republicans will tell me, hey, I'm personally for it. I just cannot cast a vote in favor of it. Or maybe they can't accept money, a donation from a marijuana company because that's public record. And really all they care about is their next election. And they don't want to jeopardize that. And there's, although we have made huge strides as far as public opinion being supportive of at least medical applications for marijuana, there's still a huge contingent that are not supportive of it. And so they're concerned about that. I remember back in 2016, I was at an election watching party with Texas Normal, and they had all these big screens throughout the building that had the election results for all of the states that were voting on it at that time. Mm-hmm. And they were bar graphs, throughout the night, 49% for, 47% against. And I remember thinking, who are these 47% of people that it's that important for them to go out and vote no on this? But I just mentioned that because I feel like a lot of people in the cannabis industry are a little bit deluded about what's going on and what's possible in the political arena and how long it takes to make these changes. This is a huge sea change that we're asking the government to admit that they were wrong for the last 50 years. It's hard to get anybody to admit that they were wrong.
About anything.
And we've got the deep entrenched reefer madness. that is just still alive and well. What an effective marketing campaign that was. So, we're still combating the stigma from all of that. In contrast, I've been getting into psychedelics. It's not burdened by that same stigma. And they've just picked up the research where it left off. The FDA is on board. All of the pharma, biopharma, et cetera, companies are, already in it. Yeah. Venture capitalists, they don't have the same trouble getting funding. I mean, people are clamoring to fund these psychedelics companies. So anyway, I mean, that's just the next frontier that I'm aiming to conquer. We've got our research bill, the first try with the backing of Rick Perry in Texas.
1802.
That's amazing. So,
yeah.
That's the next thing I'm going to be working on. Well, let's expand research. Let's, look at all the studies. Let's see if we can get to allowing microdosing and some other things, that I'm learning about.
Wow, I'm so thrilled to hear that you are already, and it doesn't surprise me to know that you're already working with, the groups that are researching psilocybin. And 1802 House bill that I mentioned, we got to talk with Alex Dominguez after that bill passed. And wow, it seems like just star-crossed events and people who supported that bill. It's just everything was in alignment, and it was really hopeful, I think, for me as a cannabis advocate, because plant medicine is plant medicine. And when we start to see, I think, these incredible findings from the research that we're doing at Baylor with psilocybin on vets, I feel like more people will have their eyes open to, well, what else is out there? And then, we've got the big old fan leaf behind the door, like, surprise, I've been here for a long time. And you're a little confused about me, but I'm here to help. That's what I feel like cannabis, how psilocybin will really help to usher cannabis into, the minds and hearts of Texans who are still afraid.
It's interesting that you said everything coming into alignment, because ever since I got turned on to this, which was a couple of years ago, I hadn't thought about mushrooms since college, and of course I thought of them in the party context. I didn't know anything about the therapeutic potential, but then I started seeing people put these Johns Hopkins studies on LinkedIn, and I started reading them. I thought, wow, this is, I suffer from some things that the mushrooms benefit. So I've tried a few things, and I've had some incredible healing experiences from it. And since I started doing that, it seems like there's been this gravitational or magnet, I don't know what it is, but it's like people, some that I knew, some that I didn't know, coming out of the woodwork, like they're just being drawn to me, like, oh, I do this and this and this with psychedelics. I do this and this and this. I'm like, really? Wow. Because I'm still a newbie to it. But I really believe in the promise, and it, like I said earlier, it doesn't have the same stigma as cannabis.
No.
And I also mentioned my LinkedIn activity, and I went to a psychedelics conference in November in Miami called Wonderland. And while I was there, someone took a picture of me, and all I was doing was holding up a copy of this magazine that said psychedelia on it, not a post, just a photo. That thing, in just a couple of days, I can't tell you, 8,000 views, a couple of hundred likes. But the point is not to tell you how much. It was the people who were liking it, and the people that commented on it surprised me, because they were sort of mainstream people that I know they don't dig what I do with cannabis. And, and they were cheering this on. So it's really interesting to see how there are some parallels. There's a lot of passion. They're both plant-based, but the paths are not parallel to legality for these two.
No, they're certainly not. And, I tend to believe that is the case. Cannabis is such a complicated issue because we've made it so, certainly with Reefer Madness, and then, locking people up, for simple possession, and really just for a plant in general, growing it, distributing it, using it. We've gotten ourselves into a pretty deep hole. And it will be hard to dig ourselves out, especially when when it becomes deschedulized. I don't know when that's happening, and and I'm not the optimist of my relationship. Patrick is the optimist. I'm quite pessimistic when it comes down to it. I think, the law is an ass, and, men are driven by egos and greed. And so you think about the prison system, you think about all of the systems that are built in place to keep the cannabis plant stigmatized and wrong and criminalized. It's like, God, it feels overwhelming, Lisa, to think about.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
and there's a lot of other interests at play.
Yeah.
There's the tobacco interest, the pharma interest, and
alcohol interest.
Yeah, exactly. And the dynamics are going to change like that with federal legalization if it allows interstate commerce, because then all of these little state monopolies are going to go away. The pharma and beverage and tobacco companies, they're just going to immediately, I'm sure Curaleaf and, all these big ones are going to be snapped up. I think a lot of people in the cannabis industry don't realize that while we've made great strides and it is a booming industry, it's still a drop in the bucket compared to other industries,
right?
And it just does not have the lobbying power or anything that the other ones do. I mean, in Texas, for example, I read that last year alone, Governor Abbott and Lieutenant Patrick took in $19 million from the oil and gas industry. So, and part of the problem is in Texas is marijuana companies or folks that want to see it legal have not donated any meaningful sums of money. I think last session, some sums were donated. And surprise, surprise, Governor Abbott softened a little bit. We did get some good improvements to the law in 2021. And in the voting guide for the primaries, I looked at what he said and his two contenders when they were asked about marijuana. And of course, his two contenders said, hell no. And that's what Abbott used to always say. I mean, his quote was, we are a law and order state and there will be no marijuana legalization on my watch. He answered this voter guide touting his signing the Compassionate Use Act into law, saying that he was open to whom else it might help, and that he was also open to reducing penalties for possession because he didn't believe that the jails should be clogged with minor offenses like that. Well, he would have never said that in the past. And I also thought it was interesting because his two contenders were really harping upon him for not being far right enough. And so for him to say that, and I think that's why he's steering the state right. And, he has presidential aspirations, et cetera. But, he kind of went out on a limb there. So,
I mean, that's great. I mean, that's movement. That's progress.
It is. I mean, we had to celebrate the baby steps.
We do.
That's what it takes. So I think in 23, we'll get a fully viable medical program. And then, we've got to see what happens in the presidential elections, because everything depends on the political trade winds,
right?
Who's in power, what the dynamics are. And so maybe by 2025, we can have adult use. We'll be surrounded. There will be more adult use states. Maybe by then we'll get a little interest federally. We'll see.
Right. Oh, okay. Well, I love that. I love that vision. And that was like my big question to ask, but I was kind of afraid to ask because I know that, when you have conversations with lawyers, they tend to tell you, just the facts and the truth. And it's always just kind of bleak with Texas. But then again, I don't think anybody really has the access that you do to, kind of what's happening, in the state with cannabis and policy and how things are moving. So I want to switch gears a little bit, Lisa, to more of, cannabis, the national cannabis scene and the growth of the cannabis economy. Early on, we saw great numbers for women. Some studies and polls would suggest that women held up to 30% of leadership positions in the cannabis industry. But today that number has dropped to somewhere around 8%. Like the numbers on the decline for women in leadership in cannabis corporations. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, one reason I got into cannabis as well was because in law, there is no amount of excellence or sacrifice that is going to get you beyond the good old boys club. It's just not, and I've learned that even more in cannabis. because now I have found myself at the hunting lodge or, at these various places where the men get together, because I was the only cannabis expert in the room to help them with their, competitive medical marijuana applications. So I didn't know just that I wasn't being invited to these. I didn't even know they were happening,
Right.
When I talk to a lot of my clients who are these incredible businessmen, and I hear them talk about, how they came to do this and that, or work with who, whatever. All these connections are always made in male-oriented scenarios, golfing, drinking out late,
shooting,
on the ski lift, blah, blah, blah. I mean, things that frankly, any woman who is a mother, it's just virtually impossible to even do those things. And as part of my self-education in cannabis, I went to a Women Grow conference in January 2015 or so in Denver. And it was really just to learn more about what can cannabis do besides help with epilepsy. And there were 1,800 women there from across the country, and they gave TED-style talks. It was an amazing presentation. It was kind of life-changing for me. But that was eye-opening for me to see that it was already a movement across the country, and it was already an industry. So I thought, this is brand new. No man owns it yet. Maybe I, as a woman, can be an early expert and authority in this if I bust my ass.
Yeah.
And so, and it was so exciting to be surrounded by all of these women. Yeah. And a lot of them were just starting their companies. I mean, there were, I heard so many amazing stories, and that just really motivated me to go for it. And so at the time, it was being celebrated that women had higher leadership roles. Cannabis is the female plant, and right. Et cetera. But as we know, the obstacles to doing business in cannabis are very high, the taxation, the banking, and the inability to get capital, especially in traditional ways. So by the time a woman gets successful with her company, in order to scale it up, she's got to take in more capital. And who has the capital? Old white men. So then they come in and then they replace the CEO. If they don't dispense with her altogether, she gets put down on some low-level position. And then the men just fill the boards with their buddies. And, and so it goes, the same as it's always been. And so women keep getting pushed out. And it's only lip service to, minority or women inclusion and involvement, because they're still not. And because I am pretty, involved in the industry and involved with these top players, and they don't mean anything by it. It's just business is, just business is business,
Yeah.
And, so it's very sad to see that decline. And 10 years ago, I started a nonprofit for professional working mothers to encourage them to get out there, refer each other business, network, leave your desk at lunch and don't do what men do, bend the rules for each other the way that men do, instead of cutting each other off at the knees. And, I kind of view women as enforcing rules against each other instead of bending them. And, so we need to support each other. We need to hold each other up. All other things being equal, we need to give that business to a woman. That's what I do. Yes. And, we can't wait around for men to do it for us. We're just going to have to band together. That's what men do. They band together. They have their little crony groups. I mean, dude A says to his buddy, hey, my heart's, giving me some trouble. So the other guy says, oh, well, let me call my cardiologist. Let me get you right in.
Yeah.
And then they do that for each other. We need to do that for each other, and just keep breaking down those barriers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that we've identified with the aggressor in so many ways as women, in the society. And you made this point about, we enforce rules against each other. Oh my God, you see that every day in every way, especially on social media. And it's just like, it makes you think, why aren't we, trying to lift each other up? Because, a rising tide lifts all boats. you know, in all ways, and especially with women. You know, when one of us is on the cover of Forbes magazine, you know, it's a win. It's a win for all of us, you know, unless it's Elizabeth Holmes. You know, it's a bad example of Elizabeth's actually in business, but I digress. No, I saw that you started that nonprofit in 10 years ago. And I thought, God, you know, you've always been kind of ahead of your time. Is that still happening right now? Is that still something that women are using? An organization?
Mostly in Houston. So I don't know if it's really still active anymore. I tried to run it from Austin when I moved back here, but you know, I was the primary cheerleader. I did all of the motivational speaking. I got all the sponsorships. I got all the members. I converted that into a paid membership model, you know, and it was really cool. But I mean, there's only so many things I can do. But at one time, you know, as a solo mom too, you know, you know, that's just another example of when I see something that needs to be done, you know, I'm going to get out there and do it. I'm going to create it. And I still see that women need to support each other more. And I think also, you know, we've got so many things tugging on us, you know, to be, you know, a mother or, you know, other roles that you have in life. Plus we got to manage the household. Plus we got to, you know, and one time my kids were staying at somebody else's house. And so I was able to just get up, take a shower and go to work. And it was like a revelation. I was like, oh, this is what it's like for a man every day. So imagine if you could pour all of your energy into your work and you didn't have to splice it up into all the different responsibilities that women have to cover on a daily basis. I mean, even if you're not a mom, you're still a mom. You're someone out there, you know, whether it's your boyfriend or people at work or whatever. You know, we're always expected to have these caregiving properties and, you know, other types of characteristics. And then, you know, there's that double standard and the tightrope we have to walk. And, you know, oh, if you're too assertive, you're aggressive. If you're not assertive enough, you're weak, you know. It's like,
you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
Exactly.
And you know, we're conditioned, we're caretakers, we're nurturers. I think it's in our DNA because we're human beings and we're one, right? There's the male and there's the female, and for a functioning society we have to work together beautifully. But it's like, why don't we get the recognition that there are only 24 hours in the day, and it does take 47 minutes to get my teenager out the door in the morning so that I can help her be a productive member of society. You know what I mean? It's just like, there's none of that. I mean, the workplace, I think it is definitely getting better, but you know, there isn't that understanding. There's a, you know, some sort of belief that that's somehow easier than hitting the emails at 8 a.m. You know, like, give me a break. God, I'd much rather roll out of bed and hit those.
One of my goals with Executive Mom Society too was I want women to be praised and celebrated for being mothers, not punished. We are punished. In law, you'll start having your cases taken away from you. I mean, just you're immediately not taken as seriously. You're immediately assumed to have divided loyalty, because in law firms, you're expected to be a slave. That's attorney.
Billable hours.
Yeah, totally. And so, you know, it's amazing. I sat outside the managing partner of a law firm I worked at for 4 years. And so, you know, when it comes up that a woman is pregnant, okay, she's off partnership track, take her work away. Let's see if we can get her to take less wages because we're gonna say she has to work less hours. But the reality is women still always go way above and overboard, you know, even if they have a quote reduced, you know, hours, they still work the same hours. But, you know, when a man goes into the managing partner and, you know, says, oh, my wife's pregnant, you know, it's like, oh, here's a cigar. Billy Bob's going to have a baby. We need to give him a raise.
Yeah, he needs to get paid more. He needs
it was just amazing to hear the complete opposite, you know, on a weekly basis. I mean, most women probably don't know that, you know, and when I go to interview for jobs, you know, they always ask me, what's your husband do? And maybe part of that is because I don't have a wedding ring on. And so, and sometimes I wear a fake one, just not to deal with that, and then, kids, blah, 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 blah. They go into all this stuff, and one of the ones, said, well, I've already got a single dad. I can't have another one of you. And another one said, well, I'm really looking for a young pup, and you're not a young pup anymore. And
is that legal?
I know, exactly. So I'll tell my lawyer girlfriends that, and it's like, oh my God, that's illegal. They can't say that. And it's like, oh, well, what am I going to do about it? File a complaint and be blackballed in my own little legal market? There isn't, practically speaking, there isn't anything that you can do about it. And I just relay these stories to let you know that it is still alive and well. It is still rampant. And women still have a long way to go in being respected. And we certainly have a long way to go in being paid equally. And it's funny, I raise my children with intense Southern manners, and also with the belief that we're not equal. Women are superior, and we are deserving of more respect because of that in all that we do in life. So.
Oh my God, Lisa, I absolutely love that. I love that lesson because it is absolutely true. I mean, we give life into the world and then we nurture it. And there's just no question about that. And it's a shame that there are folks who are living in an alternate reality. I mean, they're the deluded ones because in fact, their lives aren't as rich. Their law firms aren't as abundant. When they close a door on on a woman, a hardworking woman, period, knowing that she's going to do X, Y, Z and go above and beyond. I mean, it's maddening.
And unfortunately, women don't help other women in law firms. I mean, it's backstabby and, or if it's an older woman, like, hey, I suffered from this, you suffer too, instead of, well, let's make it better for the next generation. It shouldn't have been that way. There's not really that attitude.
God, that sucks.
Yeah.
So if you're listening, let's adopt that attitude of helping each other and being kind.
Yes, let's start a good old girls network. I mean, that's what we need. We're never going to get ahead until we do.
That's absolutely right. Good old girls network. Hey, we'll take the weekend and go to the spa, and we will do more business lying on our backs with a facial peel on than you boys could do at a hunting lodge. I promise you that. That's really one of the visions that I had for, Feminized Podcast. I mean, it's a podcast, but it is what we make it, it's only women. I fucking love this because I love talking to men, and I'm working in cannabis. I talk to a lot of men and I work with all men. And this is just my special place where I can share tips and tricks with other women who are making their way, who are opening their hearts, being vulnerable, and trying to find a better way, I think, of moving forward and building this industry than we've seen in other industries. So why wouldn't we do a feminized good old girls weekend? I mean, we'll see.
Won't be fueled by whiskey.
No, absolutely
not.
Well, good. I had to give up whiskey in 2015. I was in tech. An early career. I worked for 10 years in tech, slang and software. It was incredible. I love my coworkers. I loved what I did working for startups. It was really exciting. But, the deeper I got into, sales teams and the higher up I got on sales teams, the more bourbon there was, earlier in the day. And I'm not calling anybody out or throwing anybody under the bus, whatever you need, great. But I adopted that policy with myself, and it was changed my personality. So we are not men. We are not good old boys. You like your whiskey, great. I need my vodka spritzers and my weed. Okay, I need my bong for that relaxation.
We're different. We have complementing skills.
That's exactly right. Exactly.
I still believe we're a little superior, but
oh no, we absolutely.
We'll get there. I think it was a Doctor Who or some, I forgot what it was, some science fiction show. And it showed like a parallel universe where it was just oppositeville, Like all the worker bees and everything were men. All the people in power were women. And it was a really interesting episode.
Oh my
I
God.
loved it, and it was,
Yeah.
and to see the men be kind of like kiss assy to the women,
Yeah. Like
because the women were the one in power,
Oh God, I would love to see that episode.
Yeah.
Need to tap in every so often just to just to reset my brain. So what advice do you have for women who are looking to get into cannabis law? And just want to make it clear for everybody listening, Lisa is not a defense attorney. Don't call her if you get popped for cannabis. But she'll refer you. I'm sure you've got some great referrals there, but you work on the corporate side with corporate litigation, which is incredibly exciting and very, very sexy. So what advice do you have for women who are, looking to get on that track?
Well, the first thing that I did was just start educating myself as much as I could, so everything I could find online and books, subscribing to emails like MJ Biz Daily, Marijuana Moment. There's a lot of great sources out there. And then the next step was to go to conferences and go to all the learning sessions that I could. And for instance, at that Women Grow conference, there was all kind of fun topics. And I went to the boring ones, tax, business, blah. Just learning all that I needed to learn in order to advise folks in this industry. And then I started writing and speaking because when you write an article, you have to research everything about it in order to write about it. So it had kind of a dual purpose. I learned the subject matter, and then I could get something peer-reviewed published through the American Bar Association and get my name out there. And so after that, then I started speaking everywhere I could. And I went to the Texas Normal meetings. I met with Jack Finkel at the very beginning in 2015 when I got into this. And I said, hey, are there any other attorneys that come to the normal meetings? And she said, yeah, we'll get some that come for a month or two. And then, they just kind of fade away. And so I thought, well, I'm going to be different. I'm going to go to every single meeting and I'm never going to stand you up. And so I was a fixture at every meeting. And so I started to get involved with them and helping them out. And networking, so when you go to the conferences, you network, and so I met some attorneys when I was in Colorado, which led to my getting started, in legal work in this field. Originally, I wanted to start a wellness center for women to consult about cannabis, peppermint, any plant that has properties that can help you, nutrition, counseling. I have a really cool concept for that. But at some point I needed to generate revenue and work as a lawyer, so it's really just learning by doing. And it's kind of the same way when you get out of law school. If you were at a hardcore litigation firm like me, it's being called dropped in the grease. You're just told, do this, this, and this, and this, and you got to figure out how to do it and then go to court and kill it,
You're right.
So nobody's really holding your hand through it. Although I will say that men hold each other's hands, Like I would see, a man would come into a man's office and say, here's 5 different examples of how to do this. And let me know if you need any help with your hearing tomorrow. And la, 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 la. Whereas for a woman, it'll be like,
there you go. Don't even know what it is, but there you go. I
want to see this by noon tomorrow. Figure it out. So similarly with, cannabis law, because a lot of the businesses are startups, it's regulatory, it's government relations. It really spans every area of law. I had to learn by doing, just getting out of law school, again, how do I form companies? How do I structure them? How do I do an operating agreement? And since I, litigated over broken contracts my whole life, now I'm really good at writing them and negotiating them because I know the weaknesses. I know, I'll be negotiating with a corporate lawyer and they might say, oh, that's fine. That's been that way since the beginning of time. And they just kind of write things up and they never know what happens to you after that. So I'll say, oh no, we'll spend 6 months in court fighting over this sentence. And by the way, you don't have a venue for dispute. And by the way,
get them, Lisa, get them.
Putting a lot of things in my contracts to make sure that I have an argument when I go to court to get my client's case dismissed. So, so really I'm telling you all this because if you're a lawyer that wants to get into this, whatever it is that you already know how to do, whether it's litigation or corporate or intellectual property, you just take that and apply that to cannabis and then make a niche specialty. One of the things that I did for over 10 years was represent insurance companies. It's called first party claims when you defend them because they denied an insurance claim and then the policyholder sues. And so now I'm able to help my clients parse through insurance policies, see what they're getting and not getting. And, and that's very important, to have
valuable
to actually have coverage and not just a piece of paper saying you pay this premium, but any claim you make, forget it. Haha. So the litigation, the things that I have learned over the course of my life, that's why they call it the practice. You're always learning more and more with every case. I just apply that. So whatever you're good at, whatever you like to do, see how you can combine that with what you want to do in cannabis law.
Great advice. And it feels like that if anyone listening would like to reach out for help, that maybe LinkedIn is the best place.
Yeah. That's the only bandwidth I have for social media. So I do put effort into LinkedIn.
Awesome.
And it's true, I don't do criminal law, although I will co-counsel with a criminal lawyer to help educate on this is actually hemp, not marijuana or what have you, because law enforcement still doesn't get it. Prosecutors still don't get it. It's still brand new. Like people don't realize it's still the average person has no idea what hemp is.
No.
The average lawyer doesn't know or what marijuana is, So I do get a lot of calls and I have some really great criminal attorney friends that I do send people to because it's hard to find a trustworthy one that's not just going to take your money and disappear. So that's pretty important when you got in the fight of your life because you have a vape pen and now you're charged with a felony.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Okay. That's good to know. All right. So before I let you go, Lisa, because this has been such an awesome conversation, but I know you're like so busy. I would love to ask you this 3 questions that I ask all of my guests. Okay. So the first question is, tell me who is in your dream smoke circle, dead or alive, 3 people. And if you don't smoke, maybe your gummy circle. And of course, this is a legal state or utopian cannabis space that we're envisioning.
My 3 favorite people. That would be hard. Well, Willie is obviously one, and I have had the privilege of doing that many times in my dreams.
Nice.
And, actually, I've got a great story about that. In 1995, I went to a show with Willie and Merle at La Zona Rosa. And I was in college, so there was no way I could afford that couple $100 to get in. And so I went backstage at sound check and I said, hey, would you let me in later? And they said, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I came in, got into the show, and I met the crew, the roadies, the band, everybody. And Willie was actually filming a movie at his ranch, which now a lot of people get to see at the Luck reunions.
Yeah.
So he's got this Western town that he built for Redheaded Stranger. And so he's filming this movie and they wanted me to be in it. And so I'm there, we're doing all that. And so the next day after this concert, I find myself smoking weed out of a corncob pipe in between Pancho and Lefty. And it turns out that show at La Zona was a scene in the movie of Willie and Merle playing on stage and was probably used to finance the movie.
Oh my God. Talk about alignment, Lisa.
Yes.
Talk about alignment.
So kind of like that song, I'll Never Smoke Weed with Willie Again. I mean, Being on
The corn
Willie's
cob
bus is the only time that I have had to pass up my turn because that stuff is strong. And he just smokes like cigarettes, one after the other.
Yeah.
And I mean, he is every much as amazing as you would think he would be, and even more. I mean, he'll make you feel like you're the only person on that bus. I would bring friends sometimes. And what he would do, for example, is he would take a hit and then give it to a friend, and then he would always hand it to a different person so that person could smoke after him. I mean, he's the most gracious, humble.
Such a king.
And I remember one time I brought a friend onto the bus and he was just very nervous, and he's sitting on the couch. You could see how nervous he's like, I can't believe I'm sitting on Willie's bus,
Yeah.
And Willie and I are sitting over here at the little table, and so then Willie gets up and sits on the couch next to him, kind of like this, kind of recline.
Oh my gosh.
I'm even more nervous, and he's like,
oh my God.
So there's really no beating that,
No. Oh, how you've lived your dream. Snoop with Poncho and Lefty. Oh my God. You have lived. You're my first guest that's actually lived your dream smoke circle. Oh, that is such a beautiful.
Throw Waylon in there, and then I would have been the trifecta.
Oh God, incredible. Wow. Okay. Great story. Thank you for sharing that. All right, so next question is, what other woman in cannabis is really inspiring you right now?
Wow. I mean, there are a lot of women who are inspiring me. I wanted to mention Christine De La Rosa.
Yes.
She just gave a presentation with me down in Costa Rica where she was pointing out that companies that include women in decision-making positions actually are more profitable. Surprise, surprise.
Shocking.
You bring our insight into something. So that's a big one. Nancy Whiteman. Let's see. Who else?
Nancy Whiteman is such a cool,
yes,
smart, hardworking woman that you can't. I love seeing great things happen to great, hardworking people, like with the acquisition of Wana, or the option.
And, we've got some local heroes too. Like Shada Tarabi. She's a real hustler and a go-getter, and she's really leading with what she's doing. And I mean, there's just
so many. I know
I'm prepared for this question, but those are some names that come off the top of my head.
That's the most common answer I get is, wait a minute, there are too many. So let me just give you a list here.
I mean, I am proud of all the trailblazers out there who are, just going for it.
Yes.
And, in the face of no path, just creating the path, just making it happen, just demanding legitimacy.
That's it. We're not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going anywhere, and you will hear us. So, I love that. All of those women, I'm planning on interviewing for Feminized. So yay. Excited about those conversations. All right. And so the last question, Lisa, is what advice would you give to your 13-year-old self?
Wow. There are so many things that I wish I could tell my 13-year-old self. I don't even know where to start, but I will share something personal that while I'm a very confident person, I actually, based on my upbringing, have very low self-esteem. And it has taken me a really long time to even just claw myself up to 20% of the self-esteem that I ought to have, So I would definitely go back and tell my 13-year-old self a lot of positive things about me, what talents and gifts I had and how special that they are, and to pursue, those dreams, maybe not get scared at the statistics portion of the psychology major where I was wanting to become an art therapist and didn't think I could pass. So I slid on over to English, which led to law school. I'd probably definitely tell my 13-year-old self, don't do that. Don't go to law school. Life of misery. Although, since I started this, I've finally been able to merge my passion with my profession.
Yes.
I feel like I am helping people in some manner. And to me, that's just my nature. I want to help. I want to make things better. And with the thankless work I was doing for 15 years in commercial litigation was definitely not helping anybody other than some big corporations' bottom lines. So, this is really more what I'm after. And in the future, I still want to help people in that way. I want to go back and finish that psychology major and learn more about psychedelics and maybe be a guide, and maybe have that be a part of the Well Women group that I still want to create in the future. Let's get legalization going in Texas. And, so, I would just tell myself that your dreams are, they're great dreams, and you're right not to care what other people think, and just believe in yourself and keep doing what you're doing, which a lot of that I kind of instinctually did, but I would have loved to have heard it from my future self or from someone.
Oh, absolutely. Could you imagine as a 13-year-old looking at your future self like, man, you're a beautiful badass, like think about it. I mean, we, in all of us, accomplished women, if we think about our 13-year-old selves looking at ourselves now, like, whoa, we had nothing to worry about. Like, we should have just bet on ourselves from the beginning.
Oh, that too. Worry less. I would definitely tell myself that.
Yeah.
Don't stress yourself out. I'm like I mentioned earlier, the challenges, I'm really good at challenges and really dire situations. But I sweat the small stuff, like the silly little conversations I wish I could redo and can't be changed and don't amount to anything anyway. Like those are the silly little things that I think about at night. I would definitely like to turn off those useless voices.
Hey, man, I hear cannabis does wonders to turn off those useless voices at night. So just a tip. God, Lisa, this has been an incredible conversation. I'm so grateful for all of the wisdom that you shared, and your openness and your authenticity. I mean, it's really incredible, and I hope that this isn't the last time you come to chat on Feminized Podcast.
Me neither. I would love to talk again. It sounds like we've got a lot of things that we could explore together.
Oh, absolutely. And what I do want to say is you are creating this Women's Wellness Center right now. You are creating it. Timing will happen. The stars will align and it will all fall into place. But I mean, it sounds to me like this is something that will happen, and I will be first in line. Okay, first in line, certainly to be.
We'll be there at the ribbon cutting ceremony.
Yes, I can't wait. Oh, I can't wait.
And the concept for it's actually inspired by townhouses on Willie Nelson's property. So it's going to be a really rustic thing, kind of hill country setting. So.
Incredible. Hey, maybe the next time we chat, we'll have to meet up at Luck, and we'll just throw some mics on.
Absolutely.
And you can take me through.
Idea.
Yes. And you can tell me the story again and again about your friendship with Willie. All right.
Yeah. I'll leave you with one little funny story. I was assigned to represent him on a property matter at one law firm I was working at, and it was just random. I mean,
nothing's random, right?
It wasn't like, yeah, exactly. So he always stays on his bus, even when he's at home. So they said, okay, you go meet Willie and on this stuff, and like, get his signature. I'm like, okay. So I go out there and I knock on the door, and he opens it, and he says hi, and I said, guess what? I'm your attorney now. Everything we do is privileged.
Oh my God. That is the coolest fucking thing to say to Willie Nelson.
Yeah. That got a big cackle out of him. Like, you silver tongue.
He's like, come on in here.
Yeah.
Wow, Lisa, you're a fucking legend, man. Legend. And I'm glad we're friends. I'm really, really glad I'm calling you my friend. You're my friend. Okay.
Yeah,
you're my friend.
Definitely.
And wow. Yeah, let's do this again. Let's do it again at Luck.
For sure.
In line. Okay, first in line. Certainly to be
We'll be
guided.
there at the ribbon cutting ceremony.
Yes, I can't wait. Oh, I can't wait.
And the concept for it's actually inspired by townhouses on Willie Nelson's property. So it's going to be a really rustic thing, kind of hill country setting. So
incredible. Hey, maybe the next time we chat, we'll have to meet up at Luck and we'll just throw some mics on.
Absolutely.
And you can take me
through. Idea.
Yes. And you could tell me the story again and again about your friendship with Willie. All right.
Yeah, I'll leave you with one little funny story. I was assigned to represent him on a property matter at one law firm I was working at. And it was just random. I mean,
Nothing's random, right?
It wasn't like, yeah, exactly. So he always stays on his bus, even when he's at home. So they said, okay, you go meet Willie and on this stuff and like, get his signature. I'm like, okay. So I go out there and I knock on the door and he opens it and, he says hi. And I said, guess what? I'm your attorney now. Everything we do is privileged.
Oh my God. That is the coolest fucking thing to say to Willie Nelson.
Yeah. That got a big cackle out of him. Like, you silver tongue.
He's like, come on in here.
Yeah.
Wow, Lisa, you're a fucking legend, man. Legend. And I'm glad we're friends. I'm really, really glad I'm calling you my friend. You're my friend. Okay.
Yeah,
you're my friend.
Definitely.
And let's do this again. Let's do it again at Luck.
For sure.
If you'd like more, subscribe to the Feminized Podcast on YouTube. Follow at Feminized with Liz Grow on Instagram. Special thanks to our sponsors Moose Labs and Richard's Rainwater. The Feminized Podcast is a Grow House Media production, created by Liz Grow, produced by Patrick Pope and Tanis Ray, with original theme music and audio mixing by Q at Q to King Productions in New Braunfels, Texas.